In tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, we all have our favorite character classes. And one of the great things that I really, really enjoy about Neverwinter Nights is the duality of being able to play my favorite character classes from tabletop, bring them into virtual, bring them into the Forgotten Realms, but at the same time, explore different character builds or explore characters that I might not always play in tabletop for a variety of reasons. And in jumping into this list, what we're doing is looking at some of the tactical points, looking at some of the considerations for each character class. In the case of this vlog, we're going to explore the monk. And keeping this in mind, just to be aware, optimal builds, less than optimal builds, certain points in the build that is going to allow you to experiment and really kind of dive into the mechanics of the game. Ultimately so, and hopefully so, especially if you're new to the game, not finding yourself in chapter 2 or chapter 3 of a quest and the character class just isn't working, or you made some tweaks and things didn't quite work out the way you anticipated and you kind of backtrack and go to some old saves. So possibilities. So we have the monk, and the monk is an interesting character because literally the idea is tabletop, this internal magic, D&D 3.0, 3.x, 3.5, which Neverwinter Nights is built off of, replicates it through the use of ki, this internal magic that's going to allow the monk to do these really spectacular things. Part of them are coded in based on feats that are available for the monk, and part of it is just innate abilities that only monks get, that character class, and as they level up. So the first thing we have to realize is you are not wearing any armor at all. So any armor that you find in the game, you're not going to be utilizing. That could be a positive, that could be a negative. There's some cool item sets and some cool aspects to wear in terms of cosmetics and abilities. You're not going to be able to pull that in, but you are going to be able to sell that for gold and utilize that to wear robes. You're able to wear robes, and that does not count as armor, and that does not impact your monk abilities. What that means is the armor class is something very, very unique to the monk. And the duality of this, the idea through your martial arts training, your ki, your internal abilities, you start off with a base armor class, and then as you level up, modified by wisdom and modified by tumble, for every 5 ranks of tumble, you get +1 armor class. Your armor class is naturally going to go up. And then, of course, you do have the ability to boost armor class through amulets and rings and other magic items. The challenge here is if you do boost armor class through those rings, amulets, and magic items, literally it's taking up a slot. It's taking up a slot in your character sheet that could be utilized for something else, where normally a warrior type class, a fighter type class, because the monk is a warrior type class, the primary boost to your armor class comes from the armor. So on paper, that seems like an okay, or virtually, that seems like an okay trade-off, because you're going to level up, armor class is going to get better and better and better. The challenge here is that your armor class doesn't get high enough quick enough. And by the time it kind of caps out and gets somewhat decent, armor class is not very useful. What I mean by this, and this is true for fighter types also, barbarians, paladins, fighters, at the early and lower levels of the game, levels kind of 1 through 7, and then 8 through 12, and 12 and higher, the monsters that are attacking you, they roll the d20 and they add their base attack value, +2, +3. At the lower levels, armor class has value because you can get it high enough through armor, through shields, through magical means, through items, ring of protection, ring of amulet of natural armor. You can get that number high enough where 1 or 2 attacks miss you, or 3 or 4 attacks miss you, in a base that you're fighting with the monsters. But as the monsters get more powerful, now when they roll the d20 behind the scenes, they've got +8, +9, +10 base attack added on. They're going to quickly bypass your armor. The monk, that value is still somewhat low, and you're limited, while it's consistently gaining, you're limited by just how much you can jack it up. So what this does mean, not that armor class isn't important, it's a little misleading in the monk. You are going to get hit a little bit more than, say, a fighter or a barbarian, or a paladin. The paradox here, of course, is you are a fighter type class. You're not sitting in the back using magic. You're not necessarily using ranged weapons. You need to get up there to fight with your monk weapons or fight with your fists, and you're directly engaging head to head. So that's kind of the first piece. The second piece, and now this is where the strength of the monk starts to come in. You have access to above average attacks per turn. You're not dealing as much alpha damage as, say, a fighter or a barbarian, but you're getting more attacks. And when these attacks are modified through magical gear, there's a lot of monk gloves out there. I'm not going to give away any spoilers because I don't want to ruin the exploration of quests, but there's ways to add damage. There's ways to add elemental effects, shock and sonic to your hits when on average you're delivering more hits per turn combined with cleave, combined with whirlwind attack. You are going to do generally more damage than the fighter just on the numbers. Any more attacks you make, the more chance for that attack to get through. It's just simple rolling the dice, even going up against high armor class value monsters. Many players tend to focus on damage. How much damage, end result damage, does your character do? It's actually, what are your modifiers to hit, backing up a little bit, but also how many attacks can you realistically make a turn? Just roll enough d20s and see what pops up. So the monk is actually geared up to be a very, very efficient, fast damage dealer. But this is linked to armor class. You don't have the staying ability. You can't just, you can, but tactically, you can't just see, lower level 4 thugs running at you, just click on one thug and kind of step back. Because it's not, you need to realize that you are going to be taking more damage, you're going to be dealing more damage. So the idea of evasion, of mobility, of positioning becomes very, very important, becomes vital for the monk. Now, fortunately, there are a number of feats that allow this to happen. You can pick up evasion. You have ways to avoid attacks of opportunity. You have speed. You have massive amounts of speed. The monk's speed gradually increases, and then when this is modified through magic items, it becomes even faster. The monk is the fastest character, or I should say, depending on the build, one of the fastest characters in the game. So this means get into position. Really get into position. The monk is very much a micromanaged character. It's not just run in, click, and see you when the combat music ends. If there's 3 or 4 thugs at the lower level, you want to be there to the left and click on the left one and take that one out. Quickly focus attacks. If some of the enemies shift, you have the ability to bypass the tumble. You have the ability to bypass the attack of opportunities. Shift to the other side. You have mobility. If your henchmen are dealing with an enemy and someone's running towards you, run away. A monk is very much a point and click, you're running all around type character. The monk has, I was going to say it's their magical ability. It is this idea of the stunning fist and quivering palm. And this is kind of interesting because if you're coming from other editions of Dungeons and Dragons, or especially if you're coming from digitally Baldur's Gate, stunning fist, quivering palm was like hit, make a saving throw, and stun or kill. It was effective. It worked. D&D 3.x, the 3.0, 3.5 engine that drives Neverwinter Nights, is all about difficulty checks, DC. So the idea is, first I have to hit you. That's a check. I have to go up against your armor class. I roll a d20. This is all digital behind the scenes. There's going to be my base attack that's added, along with any magical effects or boosts that I may have. If I beat that, I'm going to hit you. You're going to take damage. You might have damage reduction. The monster might have damage reduction, although that's a little bit later on in the game, and there's ways to bypass that. But then if there's any effects, and the effects could be magical, or in this case, stunning blow, or quivering palm, there's a DC check, essentially a saving throw, to check against where the monster is adding its will, fortitude values to it. At the lower levels, you can stun and you can kill. You probably didn't really need it then at that point. At the higher levels, you're really not stunning or killing a dragon. You might, on the back engine, you can always roll a 1. So what this means is the Stunning Blow and the Quivering Palm. Quivering Palm is fun, but it's more for the lulls, just to see kind of what happens. If I have the clicky and it's available and I'm fighting a monster that's powerful, I'll do it. Usually it doesn't work. Sometimes it does work. But the Stunning Blow is really where it excels, especially in the feats. You can take extra uses of this. So essentially you can spam this, and this works best if you're playing with a party or you have access to potentially some summons through that party. You've got your little group to be able to stun a mage, or to be able to stun a cleric, or to be able to stun a monster that has area of effect. If you have 3, 6, 8, 10 uses a day of the Stunning Fist, something is going to get through. Something is going to blast through. And it's not so much tactically about stunning so you can then punch, do a lot more damage. It's more about just interrupting their physical ability to utilize spells and to utilize aspects of it. Now, this goes back to the ability scores for the monk, because the monk is not a dump stat character. A dump stat character is where, and I'm generalizing a little bit, I'm going to play a fighter. I don't need charisma. I just need to have high enough charisma so my choices in the speech bubbles are recognizable. I can actually communicate. I'm going to dump all my points into Constitution and Strength. I'm going to be, 16, 17, 18. I don't really need Dexterity because I'm going to wear heavy armor. The idea is the stats you don't need, you put to the lowest possible. The monk needs, 12s at a minimum in a lot of stats, or 16. You need wisdom. Wisdom influences the DC of your difficulty check, of your Stunning Fist, of your monk abilities. So I want, when I hit that monster, for them to make that save based my level plus my wisdom bonus. This is also feeds into armor class, because I can't have armor to boost my armor class. But if I'm utilizing slots for an amulet or other aspects, I want those to be wisdom based. I want that +1 or +2 wisdom bump in some magic item combined with gloves. So I'm hitting you, at the higher levels. I've got, +5, +6, +8 to my Stunning Fist, to my Quivering Palm, plus monk level rolled in. That's got some bite. That makes it potent, if we're crunching the numbers and playing it from that perspective. I also need a little bit of Dexterity. I'd like a +2, because that Dexterity is going to feed into my armor class, which I'm going to have the base monk level as I level up, +2 for Dex, +1 for every 5 in tumble. It's going to move up. I can't neglect armor class. I just can't count on it to the same level as a fighter. And then finally, I need some strength, because I want to have the strength. So we're only looking at like +2, +1, +2 bonuses in all of these. I'm not dumping into 18 stats in one of these. I do need some strength because I want that +1. I want that +2. I want that +3 to hit and to damage and to add it from that aspect. Now, there are some monk builds. We're looking at feats. There are some monk builds that will go all into Dex, and they'll boost the Dexterity up based on more of a finesse type build. So you'll deal through that way. The challenge with that is it takes feats to build out. And the monk feats that I want are not only the natural progression, dodge, mobility, and then spinning and pushing that out, but I do want those extra clickies. I do want those extra uses of my Stunning Fist and my Quivering Palm, because that's the bread and butter of the monk. And the workhorse is Stunning Fist, and the lulls is Quivering Palm from that perspective. So is this a character that you're going to enjoy? The monk is kind of a character you really have to manage. It's not a point-and-click fighter that you just go in, click on one enemy, okay, that enemy's dead, and I cleave the other one, click on another. Nothing wrong with that playstyle, by the way, because then you can micromanage your henchmen. But the monk is also not, say, like the wizard, which is half management, and I love playing wizzies, I play them all the time, where you're sitting back, casting area of effect spells, casting magic missile, utilizing that, and then when something gets close, run away, redeploy, crossbow, have your henchmen intercept, have your familiar, have your summons. The monk is like, where do I move over to here? Okay, attack, get away, tumble away, avoid attack of opportunities, attack here. move over to here, moving different places, and how tactically can you delay and best use your clickies. I find it to be a very, very fun class. And again, there's a little bit of a bias there because I'm pulling in from tabletop. I always play a monk, AD&D, 3.5, 3.x, current edition of D&D. I love playing monks. And there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of fun to playing one in Neverwinter Nights.